上周我们说到了如何听起来更权威，其中一个重要的技巧就是对抗 interruptor。对于喜欢打断别人的人，我们到底要怎么回应？如何防止对方继续这种讨人厌的行为？ Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 Podcast。 I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast。我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. In our previous episode, we talked about one of the key ways to make yourself seem more senior or less young is to interrupt the interrupter. We actually found a legal article talking about this specific matter, and we wanted to delve a little deeper into what happens when someone interrupts you, why are not all interruptions the same interruption, and how to deal with it a little bit more specifically.
那我们首先就先来开始讨论一下为什么人会想要打断别人 Like why do people interrupt others? So in this article, the first thing she mentioned that is people aren't aware a lot of times that they are interrupting people. They're just trying to be helpful. They're just trying to show that they're really excited or interested about this topic.
On the positive side, you will find that people, when they get really excited, they'll interrupt you as a way to like brainstorm together. And it's not malicious. It's not meant to be rude. It's just like they're so captivated by your idea, which is a hard position to be in because you're both happy that people care about what you're doing, but you're frustrated because it's like, I need to finish what I have to say.
但通常我觉得像这样子的原因都还算是蛮正面的，毕竟这整个 conversation 它是一个很正面，因为大家都很有兴趣嘛。But also, this on the flip side, sometimes people get bored, they're impatient, they're anxious to get the conversation to be, to go forward a little faster.
This we see quite a bit in the startup world where perhaps an entrepreneur is getting way too long-winded trying to explain their idea, and a VC will just be like, hold on, just tell me what you do. Like enough of all this. Or they'll interrupt very early on because they're like, okay, that's the only thing I really care about. Just talk about that. I don't need all the other fluff.
Do you think sometimes it's a good sign people interrupt others? Sometimes it's bad people interrupt others. I feel like there's two sides of it.
That's one of the things we wanted to get into with this episode a little bit, which is it's partly that, some people are just rude. They're cutting you off. And so there's things that you need to do to learn how to handle it. But the other half of that is if you find yourself getting interrupted quite a bit, it's also a good chance to reflect back on, is it actually my own communication which is driving people to interrupt me? Right. It's not necessarily they're being rude. It's I need to think a little bit more carefully about what I want to say because something is happening where no one lets me finish.
Right. So there are a couple more things. So for example, 第一个它可能是文化的. It could be cultural, and certain culture, maybe they think it's completely natural to interrupt someone, to keep the conversation going. 有的时候可能是紧急的事情 emergency 你必须要去 interrupt 别人。那有的时候呢可能是 social anxiety 这个人他在大型的会议里面他就是有点紧张 They don't really like to be in that situation, so they tend to interrupt to get the conversation going. 所以其实啊有很多很多的因素并不代表这全部都是这个人就是 rude. That's not the only thing. So I think that's something that we should keep in mind when that happens.
So let's jump into what you actually do. The first piece of advice we actually covered in the previous episode was just simply be tactful, but keep going by saying something like, may I finish? Or I have a few points to make. Could you please give me a moment to complete them?
Exactly. Or I have a couple things to say, then you'll be able to express your feedback.
So essentially just trying to stay as like the bigger person in the conversation, but you should interrupt the interrupter in any of the scenarios before where maybe they're excited, but there is a key point that you need. Maybe there's a caveat, like it's a really great idea, but you see some challenges and they're so excited, they don't let you get to them. You do need to get to that point, so you can do that. Now, if someone interrupts you continuously in a very rude fashion, you can use this, but you may find that, again, if they're impatient or they don't have a lot of time, that may not be enough. So if someone's seeming quite impatient, one of the things you can do is give them a milestone that you need to hit so that they can anticipate how much longer this is going to take. So if you find that someone's interrupting you over and over again, instead of just saying, may I finish, and then just continue along the lines you were, if there's something critical, you can go, I just have 2 more points I need to make. That's it. Just 2 more points. Now the person who's feeling impatient at least knows, okay, there's just 2 things. Right? I don't need to just sit here and wait for a potential ending point.
Exactly. So I think that's a really good point. Now, let's say you do know that you have to cover a lot of details later on. 那其实你可以先准备一下你的 audience, like get them to be ready in that headspace. 所以你可以先说, bear with me.This is going to be critical to the dialogue, or this is going to be important information for you to know.
Right. Just giving them context for why you're continuing talking. It's not that you just like your own voice, but it's either how much more information you need to give, how much time it may still take you. It may something like, I just need 2 more minutes. That's it. Just 2 more minutes. Or getting into that thing where it's just like, no. This is going to take a while, but this is really critical. So I need you to just hold on.
Now, another thing that you may also need to think about, 如果你是常常被人家打断，而且发生真的就是蛮多次了，那可能你要稍微想一下，你或许在你的说话里面，你的问题、你的提问或者是你的 conversation 里面 it could be a little bit too complicated for the listeners to process. Maybe there are a lot of layers, or maybe you go around the circle a little bit. You may need to think about how to make your dialogue or your information more direct.
When your phrasing sounds more like you're just brainstorming out loud, like, oh, we could do A or we could do B, or the benefits of A would be this, but maybe B has some other potential. When you speak in a way that you're thinking, it does invite other people to jump in, which is maybe inviting interrupters, because you think you're just brainstorming out loud, you're giving them possibilities that you want to talk about later, but to them, they might be like, no, just do that one, B. B, we're done. Why do you keep talking about C, D, E, F, like just B? But when you sound a little bit more decisive or a little bit more straightforward, people will tend to wait until you're done making your statement. The problem with A is this. The problem with B is this. So I think we should go after C. That's very different from, well, we were thinking about A, but then here were some of the considerations, and then B came up as a possibility. This sort of phrasing leaves an opportunity for someone to go, well, what do you mean by that? Why are you not choosing B? Well, what's going on with C? But when it's very directed, we tried A, we tried B, so we're going with C. And now someone's just waiting for that conclusion.
Right. 所以今天如果你是一个领导者，你必须要做个决策, then just say that. We need to move forward with option B. Right? Just say that. Don't go talk about A and B and C, because people get a little bit like confused. What are you talking about right now? 所以这个部分呢，就是可以更直接一点。So now the third one is that if people just keeps interrupting anyway, 那这个当然就是一个非常 frustrating 的 situation. 可能对方在这个 situation 里面有点 social anxiety, they just keep interrupting and they seem really impatient. 那就算你之前已经说了 may I finish and that still didn't work, then you can try to do something even more direct. So for example, you can say, I'm trying to communicate with you, but you're not allowing me to do so. This conversation isn't productive.
essentially just being very direct or calling them out on what they're doing. Let's say that they're excited, they're actually really happy. Then you can still use this tone, but flip up the wording a little bit. I'm really trying to communicate with you, and I'm really happy you're excited about this, but I need to get the whole idea out so that we can have a discussion on it. Just give me a minute. Which means you're essentially calling them out on their behavior, and they may get embarrassed, it may be a bit awkward, but you have a decision whether you want to continue this conversation or not. And showing them what they're doing can help.
So everything we talked about today, it's really important when you want to be that leader in your organization, in your company, because when people want to interrupt you, it may be because they're excited, it may be because they're impatient, maybe because they're just simply rude. And find a way to adjust, or you just have to be more direct. And that is all really important and critical when you want to become a leader.
Another big aspect of that is if you notice when someone on your team is getting continually interrupted, you have an option. And the option is not just go stop the interrupter from interrupting or tell the person to suck it up. It's actually addressing this from both sides. So talking to the interrupter about letting other people finish their ideas. But as we've covered a little bit in this podcast, is talking to the person getting interrupted about the way they're structuring information. It's quite possible that they have good ideas, but they have a very specific way of communicating, which either invites interruption, or people who are impatient or they get bored or they don't see the point are just going to jump in and stop that person from talking. That's something that they can also practice, improving how clear they are in the way that they present information. We hope that you got something out of this discussion on how to interrupt interrupters and what does it mean if you're being interrupted quite a bit. The article where we got a lot of inspiration will link in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. And if you have any go-to phrases or go-to ways to stop people from interrupting you, or stories about how you improved your communication to stop being interrupted, please let us know on social media, EP Facebook, or Communication R&D Instagram. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.